Hey there, friends. Welcome back to As a Man Thinketh on UNASA TV. So yesterday we saw images of the first 59 or so Afrikaners seeking refugee in the United States, entering the United States. And in a rare sign, we saw them holding and waving American flags as if they were actually proud to be here. Imagine that. So I wanted to discuss this real quick with you guys because anytime this subject comes up, there's a bunch of controversy over, why we are offering refugee status to Afrikaners, which are kind of a sub-name for white African farmers.
These are the first group of white South Africans who've been fast-tracked into refugee status. The Trump administration made a big thing about cracking down on immigration and suspending the refugee resettlement program. So questions are being asked, and why has such an exception been made for this group of people?
I get it. There are a lot of people around the world that are facing a lot of challenges and need a place to go. America is one of the last free places to go. I think that when it comes to the Afrikaners, there's a lot of, I don't know if it's jealousy or what is being put out there by the media, but there's a lot of misinformation that ends up being published about what's actually been going on over there in Africa and why these people are being granted refugee status.
South Africa's foreign minister says that there has been no land confiscation, and Donald Trump's claims that murders are happening in large numbers is not backed by any police data.
First of all, it's important to know as well that they haven't just sought refugee status in the United States. They've also sought it in other countries, Canada, Europe. They have been looking for places to go to escape what they feel is a genocide against their people. And whether or not that's true, I'm not going to get into that so much as I'm going to present you guys with some facts, and you can form your own opinion on that by the end of this video.
But it's a genocide that's taking place that you people don't want to write about. Farmers are being killed. They happen to be white, but whether they're white or black makes no difference to me.
So first of all, white African farmers, they have nicknames for them. Some people call them Boers, and some people call them Afrikaners. They prefer to be called Afrikaners. There are settlers that went into South Africa many, many years ago, and people don't recognize this, but a lot of the Black Africans in South Africa were also settlers. Some of them, many of them, came from other parts of Africa.
I think I'm hardly an expert on South Africa at all, but I am American. So can I just give my overview of of the different groups in South Africa, and you correct me, but just so people following along, because I think it matters for reasons I'll explain. So South Africa, there are basically two big white populations in South Africa historically. They're what were called the Boers, the Afrikaners, who were basically religious refugees. A mixture of Dutch and French Huguenots, Protestant Dutch, Protestant French, who moved to Southern Africa for reasons of religious liberty. Okay, and then you had the English, who I think were, after the Boer War, in power.
Yes.
Who mostly were there for economic reasons and had, in many cases, passports back to Great Britain. And then you had a couple of different African black groups, the largest of which I think is, to this day, are the Zulus.
Yes.
Who, like the Afrikaners, the Boers, and the English, were not native to the area at all. They were newcomers who arrived, I think, just right before the Boers did.
Yeah, not long before.
Okay, this is all true?
Arrived. Yes.
And they, as invading groups often usually do, kind of exterminated the native population, who were what we would call the Bushmen.
The Khoi and the San, as they are also called.
Thank you.
Yes.
They are renowned for their agricultural expertise worldwide. And I have had the opportunity over the years to work alongside some of these Afrikaners, both in the United States and in Canada. And I can tell you that they do have, when it comes to farming, extraordinary skill, extraordinary expertise. And that's one of the things that makes them one of the best labor workforces in our country that are immigrant labor workforces. So when we're talking about refugees coming into this country, These are people that lend a significant amount of knowledge and expertise to our food security. And we've already been bringing a lot of them over seasonally to work here because of their abilities. So these are very strong workers, very knowledgeable workers. They are very useful to the United States economy. When you bring people like that into our rural communities, it brings fresh blood into the communities, and I think that rurally speaking, you know, we've seen a decline in a lot of our rural, the decline in the quality of life, decline in productivity. And so again, you've got these people with expertise that are going to be moving into the United States. They're most likely going to be moving into jobs within the agricultural sector. Maybe they want to start up their own farm, depending on, you know, what kind of investment they have. I'm going to get into some of what has happened to these people and why they probably don't have a whole lot to invest. But if they do come into rural communities, you know, anytime you have fresh blood, fresh expertise, it's a revitalization process. So why are these Afrikaners coming here in the first place? Well, they believe that they are the victims of something almost on the scale of genocide, if not genocide.
Well, this is taught at universities in South Africa. There's a theory called Azania critical theory. Azania is a Pan-African word for South Africa. And they actually get this from Americans like Robin DiAngelo, who's this Ibrahim X. Kendi, Ta-Nehisi Coates, these people. They get it from them, and then they put an African flavor on it, which essentially boils down to a theory that justifies the targeting and extermination of the white minority. And so the theory, to summarize, goes more or less like this. There's an African term called Ubuntu, which means brotherliness, or it's about your internal humanity. It's a Zulu term. And the theory goes that white people are incapable of having Ubuntu. But Ubuntu is the essence of humanity. So if you don't have it, you're not truly human. So it boils down that the logical conclusion is that if you kill a white person, then you did not actually commit murder. So this is not widely believed in South Africa, but this is taught at universities by university professors, and it's certainly believed by radical elements.
It's a predicate for genocide. I mean, it's always the same in we're watching in parts of the world now. They're not fully human, right? So we can kill them because they're fully human. Then it's of course a grave sin to kill them.
Yeah, well, we've always been saying that there's not a genocide in South Africa, looking at what happened in Rwanda and so forth. It's not the same thing. But it is very alarming to look at some of these claims that are being made and to compare that to what was made in Rwanda.
And there's debates on that as well. But basically what has happened is there's a lot of crime in South Africa, a significant amount of crime in South Africa. And the crime in the rural areas tends to be unusually brutal. They take their time with their victims. It is grotesque. And the reason why it seems to be more brutal out there is because the police response is extremely slow. There's just no protection for these people living in rural areas. Now, the argument there is that this happens to both black farmers and white farmers alike. But the statistics show significantly that these attacks happen significantly more to the white farmers. A lot of people would argue that that's just simply because there are more white farmers. They're the ones who own all the land. I'm going to play you guys a clip by an investigative reporter, Alex Newman, where he has saved a couple clips from political leaders in South Africa. And after you watch this clip, you make up your mind whether or not you think that these people are being targeted for racial purposes, who they are, or whether or not you think this is just crime in South Africa.
Now, I first figured out there was a food crisis going on, an engineered food crisis coming in 2012. And it started in South Africa. I used to live in South Africa. I'm very fond of South Africa. South Africa is not really a true country. It's a collection of nations all amalgamated under a communist regime. But when I saw in 2012 the president of South Africa singing "Shoot the Boer," by the way, Boer means farmer in Dutch and Afrikaans, saying "Shoot the Boer," this doesn't sound like a good idea. Why would you want to shoot the farmer? Here's the video that turned me on to what was happening. This is the president of South Africa talking about shoot the Boer. They translate Boer as white man, and Boer has, of course, become associated with the Afrikaner people, but Boer means farmer.
Manza! bethu ozani sondelani nineniwinileyo.
He's on national television in South Africa. We're going to shoot them. And it goes on for about 5 minutes. So the cabinet's going to shoot them, and shooting the farmers? Like, they tried that in Zimbabwe and they ended up starving. What a stupid idea, right? But that was my first hint that something really fishy was going on. Now, Julius Malema, he was the head of the ANC Youth League at the time. The ANC is the Communist Party that governs South Africa in an open alliance with the Communist Party of South Africa. Here he is singing, "We're going to shoot the farmer." Again, national TV. All right, we're going to shoot the boer, we're going to shoot the farmer. Again, what a dumb idea. That's why people go hungry so frequently in Africa. But this has already actually started. By 2012, there had already been a massive wave of brutal murders against farmers. They actually have a hill in South Africa. They call it Plaasmoorde. It means farm murder in Afrikaans. And you can see a picture of the hill. There are thousands of little crosses there. Each one represents a farmer who was murdered by communist terrorists. Some of them in the most grotesque fashion imaginable. I won't even describe to you the tortures that they do. They leave Bibles on them as a warning. It's just unbelievably horrific. Women, children, elderly. And by some estimates, 10% of the commercial farmers of South Africa have already been slaughtered. There was about 40,000. There's been at least 4,000 murders. Nobody in the fake news is talking about this. When Donald Trump tweeted about it, the fake media lost its mind. And so this was my first clue that something fishy was going on. Now, the top expert on genocide in the world, Gregory Stanton, he was actually founded Genocide Watch, and he was an anti-apartheid activist, so nobody can accuse him of being a racist. He actually said the South Africans were at stage 6 out of 8 on the genocide scale against the Afrikaners, who, by the way, produce all the food there. It's the most productive farmers on planet Earth. No offense to American farmers, but each one of them feeds, on average, 1,200 people. And he said they were already at stage 6 out of 8. 6 is the preparation and planning phase. Stage 7 is the actual slaughter. Stage 8 is denial after the fact. So this is kind of an important story, and the fake media wasn't talking about it. Here's Gregory Stanton talking about his findings. He says the South African government is directly inciting genocide against these people.
Clearly, the rhetoric in that clip that is coming from the leaders of South Africa is to cause harm to these Afrikaners. There's no other way of explaining it. That's what they said. They try and pass it off as this is just a song that we sing as a tradition. But in most places, songs like that would be outlawed because it is causing people to bring harm to a certain group of people. Many of you have noticed that we keep wearing these leather patch hats that say "Defend the Right to Farm" on them. These leather patch hats support our nonprofit, Meet My Neighbor Productions. You can get your hat at Yanasa Trading Co. and help us defend the right to farm through education, outreach, and, as we've been doing over the last couple of years, farm relief efforts. So get your leather patch hat and let others know that you defend the right to farm. There are also certain laws that have passed in South Africa, like the Black Economic Empowerment Act, which again racially divides the people in South Africa. And I think anytime a government steps in and causes racial division, it makes these situations 10 times worse. The purpose of the act was to restore more opportunities to Black Africans, but it also directly targets these white African farmers. And remember, a lot of the people in South Africa are all migrants to the area. A lot of the people that are protected in a lot of these acts are also migrants that settled in those areas. Not all of them, but a lot of them. They also have imposed a land appropriation without compensation act, which allows them to take land away from these white farmers and expropriate it back to black farmers and black people to spread out, redistribute the wealth. This is a typical thing that you see within communist regimes. What's interesting, though, is that South African farmers actually only own about 25% of the land. Most of the land in South Africa is owned by the government. If they wanted to kind of equalize the scenario between black farmers and white farmers, or other ways to do it without taking away from one group and giving to another. And again, you know, whatever the intent is there, it does create a separation, a divide amongst the people. It creates racial tensions. The government is actually the one that is creating these racial tensions with these acts and these plans that they're putting forward. And based on the video clip that I played for you earlier, it would appear as though they are egging a lot of this on. So when we see these people coming into this country, and there's a lot of conversation about it, there's a lot of people who are upset by the fact that they have been given refugee status. I do think that they faced some severe situations out there in South Africa, situations that were not fair to them, regardless of what the race is, whether it's Hispanic or black. I mean, nobody should ever be targeted. Jewish, nobody should ever feel like they are targeted based on the color of their skin or their ethnicity. I think that's absolutely wrong. Offering them refugee status here in the United States, I think, is a good strategic position, especially at a time when we're seeing a lot of changes in the realm of agriculture and food security. We could also be entering a time where we really need to be a little more on top of what we produce here in the United States, especially if global tensions keep rising, and making sure that we have the talent to be able to adjust our crop production and act with the times. And I think that these people are experts in what they do. They're really good, hardworking people. So they're strategically important to the United States and our food security. I'm not saying that the farmers in the U.S. can't do that, but we are losing a significant amount of farmers every single year. I'm going to do a video this week on what's happening in Oregon. We're losing a significant amount of farmers year over year over year. And so, by bringing people in, that's what their blood is, that's what they want to do. There's a strategic purpose to that as well. So I think that overall, what we're seeing is a good thing, in my opinion. I have my opinions about what has happened to them, and like I said, I just wanted to share some of that information with you, and maybe you can form your own opinions on that. But I do think that a lot of the division that's happened there in South Africa, it's hard to not look at it and say, that it's been partially fed by the government, if not entirely fed by the government. And this is a persecution of people. And we should be, as America, this is the only refuge left in the world for people like that. Canada is not really a refuge anymore. Europe isn't really a refuge anymore. Where else are they going to go? And, the fact that they came in waving flags, proud to be here, proud to be new Americans, is a bit, well, it's something that you would expect to see from people who are migrating to the United States. In any case, guys, I just wanted to touch on that because every time this subject comes up, there's all these people going back and forth about it. And I wanted to give you a little bit of my 2 cents on it and, why I don't think it's a bad thing.
Ancient eras and natural selection have refined and tailored pristine fibers with the resilience for today's days. Evolving beyond the last ice age, bison wool is nature's most dependable activewear. Buffalo Wool Company, 100% proven by nature, 100% American made.
Check out the Buffalo Wool Company collection at Yanasa Trading Co.
AFRIKANERS.com.